What immediately tells you that a person wasn't raised right? Story 1. Not being able to maintain other people's privacy. Met someone who, within hours of meeting, and without any specific prompt, was telling me about the medical issues/conditions one of our mutual friends has, which was clearly told in confidence, and now I know about it against my will. I feel like I need to apologize to the mutual friend about hearing it. Story 2. When someone looks down at others based on what they do, that just clearly shows that they've learned the same thing from their caregivers. Story 3. The way how everything is nothing their fault, and it always somebody else's fault. They overslept? Somebody else's fault. The job they were assigned to do didn't get done? Somebody else was slacking. They were speeding along the highway and swerving lanes and rear-ended somebody. It was the other person's fault. Story 4. When someone apologizes and then adds a but onto it. For example, my boss held a meeting among the kitchen staff where he apologized for his attitude and then added, "But you guys need to understand that I'm a no bullshit kind of person." No, sir. That's not how apologies work. Story 5. They believe they owe literally no one anything. I get looking out for yourself, but there's just something so cold and dark about that to me. Answer. Their mindset is the opposite of entitlement, which is equally bad. Basically, instead of the happy middle ground of everyone helping everyone, or entitlement, which is expecting others to do things for you, they expect nothing from others, but then think it's fair to do absolutely nothing for others. The issue is they don't see that not extending any basic courtesy actually costs others things. Leaving the cart in the middle of the parking lot, littering, voting down education spending, you name it. Society requires a little bit of effort and cost from everyone to have nice things. Story 6. A complete lack of respect for stuff that doesn't belong to them. An example, middle school, they finally built an addition onto the building so they could get rid of the temporary trailer classrooms out back. Brand new everything, from the concrete all the way up to the roof. First day of class, I was in the bathroom using it for its intended purpose, and I watched another student walk into the stall and turn in a circle while peeing the whole time, all over everything. When he was done, he zipped up, walked out, said something like, and that was that. Story 7. Dropping their trash on the ground, putting their coffee cup next to instead of inside the dishwasher. Talking too loud on their phones in the office instead of using their indoors voice. Story 8. This one is a lot worse than it seems on the surface. Not caring about true and false. Answer? Story 9. Had a friend like this. We had multiple falling outs over the course of our friendship because she would blindly trust anything and everything she was told. So many times she would get mad at me and ghost over some random rumor about me, or she'd hear a rumor about someone close to me and freak out on me for still being friends with that person. Of course, all of these rumors were found to be untrue, and she'd come crawling back to apologize, glad to be free of the drama. Story 10. Making messes in public spaces that they would never make at home just because they know someone else will clean it up. If you've ever worked a public-facing service job, you know. Story 11. One of the biggest signs that someone wasn't raised right is a total lack of empathy. You know, those people who just can't seem to put themselves in someone else's shoes or who dismiss others' feelings like they don't matter. It's like they never learned the basic human skill of understanding that their actions and words affect other people. Another thing that stands out is how they treat service workers or anyone they perceive as beneath them. If someone is rude, condescending, or entitled when they don't get their way, that's a big red flag. It says a lot about their upbringing, like they were never taught the importance of kindness, patience, and respect. Story 12, they have no bathroom etiquette. I've seen some of the nastiest shit in the women's public restrooms. So like you just left your bloody tampon on top off the trash can lid, pissed on the floor, shit on the walls, and then continued your workday like you aren't a nasty asshole. Story 13, proud and confident rudeness to service employees because they feel it is their duty to remind them what failures they are for being normal, productive members of the dominant working class, and they're doing them a favor, harassing them into a different life path. These people can do everything right in academia and career and still be a colossal waste of humanity. Teach your kids some compassion and thanks. Story 14, things that tell me a person was raised right. They hold the door for you. They say thank you and please. They will help carry your bags or offer their chair if a person older than them comes in, or will hold their elderly family member's arm as they cross the street. They are aware of other people's comfort and are good hosts when people visit. Basically, they're thoughtful and not self-centered. Story 15. Not trying to better themselves in any way, and complaining that things, usually money, aren't just handed to them, instead of elevating themselves to actually earn it. Not contributing to anything and draining everything and everyone instead. Story 16, expecting something for nothing. Had a healthcare business and hired several college students on salary with set schedules. One never showed up to work, but lo, when payday rolled around, they walked in and expected a paycheck. No, bozo, you have to show up to work. What you did was called job abandonment. Don't owe you a dime. Of course, bozo wanted to sick a family member lawyer on me. Never heard from that clown car since. Look, I get the work smarter, not harder philosophy. The key word here is work. You gotta do the work for it too, Yano, work. Story 17. People who look down on others for being less than, especially when it comes to education. Not everyone has been given the same opportunities in life. Not everyone had a stable home. Not everyone had someone to help them learn things. Just because you are privileged to have these things does not mean you should rub it in the face of those that didn't. Story 18. Probably slightly controversial, but the way they talk about homeless people, or those who are otherwise experiencing evident crisis. The amount of people I've met who are perfectly willing to say some of the most horrific shit about people experiencing hardship is disgusting. If you can't be sympathetic, be quiet. Story 19. How they treat service staff. Once had a good friend treat a waitress like total shit. It was the first time we'd eaten out together, and I never ate out with her again. And I left an extra big tip. Our friendship didn't last either, because it really changed how I felt about her. Story 20. Leaving grocery carts in the parking lot, not taking them to the corrals. It lets me know all I need to know and would want to know about a person. This doesn't apply to elderly or disabled who have difficulties walking or being mobile, as that's super understandable. But if you're able-bodied or young or not disabled, I do silently judge you for being lazy. Story 21. I live in northern Nevada. For the most part, people are polite and considerate. However, there is a certain segment of the population that happily indulge in a particularly psychotic habit, and they don't care who sees them do it. And I can't believe how hard this is to write. You know the remains of animals on the shoulder of a road or highway? Nobody stops to put those little bodies there. They actually swerve to kill them. It's like a bloody, evil, and severely stupid video game. Story 22. Store clerks who rub their noses, sneeze or cough, touch money and then touch your food or put a lid on your coffee cup without washing or spraying their hands first. Also assholes like this one girl I used to know who seemed totally normal. But when a group of friends tagged along to a party at some stranger's house, she thought it was a flex to steal their CDs or break random things in the home just for fun, because she'd get away with it. Story 23. Gossiping, especially about friends or loved ones, but also just in general. If you're talking about something serious and sensitive for another person in a demeaning, unserious, or snide way without them present, I just know that you weren't raised right. Story 24. Flipping out over little issues in public, expecting everyone to treat them as royalty, treating laws and policies as suggestions that don't really apply to them when they are inconvenient, but written in stone commandments when it applies to people who annoy them. Story 25. They never thank anyone. They can't ask for help, but still expect it and get upset when it's not given. They constantly try to cheat, shirk, litter, and generally behave like shit anytime they can get away with it. They look down on people and use any excuse to assert superiority, even when imagined or inconsequential. And most of all, they never take responsibility and cannot apologize. Story 26. Recently went on a date with this girl. She got annoyed for some reason that I can't even remember what it was about because it was so menial. Well, she gave me a very light shove and a small slap. I barely felt it, but I could just tell that if she was actually pissed off down the road, she is the kind of person that would actually try to hurt someone, even if it was their significant other. Didn't even give her the courtesy of telling her why I didn't want to see her again. Straight ghosted. I have zero tolerance for that, let alone on a first date. She was not raised right. Sadly, it was something she probably was on the wrong end of for most her childhood. Story 27. Lack of introspection. Not being able to examine how their actions may have caused a thing or how someone reacts to them. Related to that, not even trying to understand how what they did created the circumstances they end up in. Although I would suggest that a talent for introspection is a learned skill for people who had traumatic childhoods, where they were blamed for everything, so they had to try and figure how, when, where, and if they were truly at fault. So they could figure out how to not be that way / that version of themselves anymore. Story 28. I knew this girl at work who was always so nice. Then I realized I recognized her tattoos as the ones from the person in the car in front of me flinging cigarettes out the window every single morning while driving into the building. My opinion on someone has never switched up faster. Story 29. When they treat employees at a business like butler or maid, I had to deal with, I estimate a college grad who came to the gym I work for to work out. And when he got off the equipment he used, he raised his hand up, snapping his fingers, and started saying, "Hello, I need a paper towel with disinfectant now. Now!" My coworker walked over and said, "Please get it yourself. Nobody is your butler or maid." When the coworker walked away, the guy chased my coworker and said, "Look at my hand. Do you see what I see? No paper towel now. Get me one." When my coworker repeated themselves, the guy tried to throw a punch at my coworker, but luckily I was nearby, caught the punch, and held him in an arm hold until security came and cuffed him. I told him my boss would deal with him, and I hope she showed him the security footage and called the police to press charges for attempted assault. Story 30. Can't simply return a shopping cart. Litter is definitely #1, but the cart return kills me, as someone that drives an old vintage truck and babies it. When you come out of the store and find a cart pushed into the side, fuming, and just sad that our society has fallen to this level. Story 31. When they have a pithy saying or mantra ready to go to justify their bad behavior. I saw one of those pranking porch pirates videos where the family thought they had just stolen an iPhone, and this little kid goes, "They can just buy another one," as if to say the theft was okay. No way he wasn't just repeating what he'd heard his parents say in order to justify their stealing. Story 32. Had a kid in a class way back in elementary school who had a reputation for borrowing money from other kids and not paying back. Years later, when we went to the same middle school, one day he asked me for 50 cents because he didn't have enough for a bus fare. Long story short, it turned out that he did in fact had enough money for the bus fare, but borrowed money from me just because he could and used that money for something else. Also, I never got that money back. When I asked for my 50 cents back, he simply replied, "No." Story 33. People who don't say good morning or goodbye at work. Especially if you're a very small company. I understand not doing this once in a while, but it's kind of fucked up when it happens frequently, or they say nothing to you when they see you for the first time in the day. It's not very hard to just take a second to acknowledge someone. You don't need to have a conversation. It's just bad manners. Story 34. Letting their little kids make a giant mess at a restaurant and not even trying to help clean it up. They should be absolutely mortified, but no fucks given. Just let them throw fits and make everyone else's dining experience terrible with screaming kids. I get it. Had kids. Also avoided decent restaurants for years because of that. Get a sitter, eat at home, or go to McDonald's or something. Please don't ruin my evening out because you can't control your crotch goblins. GTFO. Story 35. My guy gets irritated when I start ranting every time I see garbage, like when we are hiking. To see it in protected places especially upsets me. If the person left it there, I know they don't care where else they leave it. It physically hurts me. Story 36. I don't view it as raised right or wrong past approximately 25 or so. You're an adult and you are your choices. Chances are people have pointed out that whatever you did, choice you made, wasn't right. Littering? We've all seen it modeled as a bad thing online, on TV, on billboards, on the job, on signs. Cutting in line? We all understand the concept of how it should work, and the person in front of you has also been waiting. Consistently looking down on others? We've nearly all worked a shit job, or again, seen it modeled somewhere with the hardships and situations laid out. If you're a shit twat past about 25 till to 30, you're actively choosing to be a shit twat. We know you're making that choice. Maybe it's a bad day or rough time. So take your moment and then please, get back to doing what's been shown is the sane, normal fucking shit. My parents in childhood weren't completely perfect either, but that becomes a louder and more BS excuse for your behavior the longer you're on this planet. Story 37. They either stand by while their kids do totally socially unacceptable things or completely ignore them. Even if they're not their own kids, how they watch kids of their own or someone else gives you immediate insight into the most basic things that are wrong with them that would otherwise take months or even years to discover through normal social interactions. Story 38. As a teacher, there are lots of ways, but two of my biggest are when they blatantly ignore my instructions and act like I don't exist. When they ask for something or to do something, I say no, and then they keep asking. Shows me that they just wear their parents down until they give in and are assuming they can do the same to me. Obviously, there are tons more like disrespect, but these are the two that make me the most crazy on a daily basis. Story 39. I'm an American, so give me a little rope here. But people who don't assume that taking your shoes off upon entering someone's house is the way. I know that some of us are weird and allow shoes in the house, but it's always polite upon entering to ask, if you're not outright directed, but always default to taking them off. I've been to plenty of homes where upon entering I go to take my shoes off, they say something like, "No, that's fine," which I'm cool with. But I showed the respect. All that being said, take your shoes off before you go inside people. Story 40. When they expect people to fulfill the smaller acts of order, often displayed in domestic situations, like changing toilet roll, replacing soap, wiping a bench, etc. Small acts that matter, but if someone doesn't do these things, it means they don't recognize them, and therefore have always had someone to clean up after them, and then go on to expect that or not even be able to see it. Story 41. I was at a coffee shop recently behind this man and his son, and the kid was feral. He was sitting on the counter. Barista had to tell him to get off because dad wouldn't. He was running around touching everything. My coffee comes out in a mug and saucer, and this kid runs up and sticks his face in it, literally dipped his nose in the cup. Dad says absolutely nothing. I look at this kid and say, "Did you really just stick your nose in my coffee?" And he goes, "No," and smiles. The barista and I exchanged looks in disbelief, and she remade my coffee, but the dad never said a single thing, didn't even apologize or offer to tip the barista, just left once they got their order. Poorly raised kids raise kids poorly. Story 42. It might be personal, but people who always come empty-handed to other people's house, events, etc. And it's not about money. I was raised very poor, but no matter what, my mom would always send me to my friend's house with something, cheap biscuits, juice, or whatever. Sometimes I was ashamed because some of my friends were rich, but I never went empty-handed. Since then, I always bring something, and I feel weird when people don't, especially when it's every time. Story 43. I live on a one-way side street off a main road in a major city. As a result, a lot of ride-share drivers take their breaks and eat their fast food meal on my street. They open their car doors and just leave the trash on the curb despite there being 4 public trash cans with one on each corner of the block. They also pee in bottles and leave those on the curb too. Their mothers would be so proud. Story 44. As a cashier. Not saying good day. I work in a highway gas station in Belgium. We get people who speak like 10 different languages daily. Now I can't smell if you speak German, Dutch, French, English, Polish, Spanish, or whatever. If I say "Guten Morgen," good morning in Dutch, please fucking say hello back in your language because it's both proper manners and it also helps me help you. And if you don't be surprised, I will just speak Dutch no matter what. Story 45. Talking down to waiters or waitresses, treating them like they're not a human being working a hard-ass fucking job. If I even hear a woman at my table start talking down or acting like they're not shit, won't look at them or smile or be gracious, I am beyond off-put. I was a waitress for over 10 years and I know exactly what it's like. I've had some of the worst days of my entire life while serving at a restaurant. So many fellow co-workers of mine reached their breaking points while serving. Had a guy get so mad and was so in the weeds, he just said, "Nope, I'm done," cashed out and walked out. I have had so many fantasies about doing that. Story 46. No respect for others. Many areas, but respecting others on public transport is a biggie for me. Offer your seat to someone who needs it. Don't have your call on loudspeaker. Someone nearly got filled in by a very unhinged man for this on the bus last week. Don't freaking vape in buses, trains. Don't pretend you aren't while doing a Thomas the Tank Engine impression and subsequently making the whole bus smell like pineapple. Story 47. People never-endingly saying shit about others, or in general saying a bunch of shit without thinking a nanosecond and blaming on, "Yeah, I hot character, you can't forbid me to express myself." Those ones are just idiot child adults with shitty lives, and they know it. But instead of introspection, they just make noise by saying rude things all the time to the point I just want to smash their head on a table corner. Like one day I was in a summer job of waiter in a restaurant and some guy asked me if it's not too hard because it was 3 a.m. and we did a break before closing. And that woman replied without being asked, "Yeah, he started at 11 a.m. Of course he's not tired." And of course that was the one yapping shitty jokes on me 24/7 just because she didn't like me. And because I was playing it like, yeah, go on, I don't give a F. Like, bitch, CFU, maybe can you stop being an annoying 35-year-old child for 5 minutes? And what do you know?